One thing on concaves, if you grew up with a 9600 or 20 series, you knew how big of a pain it was to get a concave in and out, to go get it chromed or to do anything with it, to level it. So a lot of times people didn't do much of anything with the concave. They put it in, leveled it, they ran it until it had to come out, and then they called somebody else to do it because they didn't want to deal with pulling the feeder house off and all that. One thing with the STSs, they come out really easily. It doesn't take long to get them out, doesn't take long to level them. And so one thing you'll see when we do an inspection on it, if you call us up, we'll go out, we'll inspect the combine. We're going to pull that concave out, and we normally leave it out unless the customer says no, put it back in. It isn't because we're being lazy. It's because we're doing the inspection. We want to look in there and get a better inspection for you, so we could look up front, we could see the feed flights, we could see the thrashing elements, and we could look back and see the tines, look at the top covers, the Z-plate, a bunch of other things right in there. So that's why we pull it out. And then it's worth your time to either have us come back or you do it yourself to put it back in and spend the time leveling it. We could shove it back in and concave still level front to back where you had it last, but with the ease of these concaves going in and out and adjusting them, that's one of the things that yearly you'll see. There's a spot later on we'll talk about pre-harvest checklists. I have leveling your concaves on there. Paul's going to go through and level it. Brand new machine, it's probably going to be off. We level a little bit different than what your operator's manual says to do. We'll go through that. Paul will run through it, and then I'll tell you the differences of why we do it different. But the more accurate job we do with that, the better off we're going to be with running. We're going to find that we're going to get a lot less wear in the machine. I've came across machines that have not been leveled. Maybe they were leveled backwards to where it pinched in the front, and then at the back it widened up. I fought a machine for several days once before I finally decided, well, I know it was leveled by another place, so I'm going to go in and check it anyhow, and found it way out. And it makes a big difference on how it does. It doesn't take a lot of tools. Go ahead and show us how to level them.
Could be a sumo wrestling guy.
He could be. Too?
No, it doesn't come with the tools.
But you'll see he doesn't have a whole lot of tools with him.
So what you do is you pull your center concave out. These stops here, back these stops off, so they're all the way up, out of the way. So nothing will stop you. You want to hop up in the cab and you'll close your concave all the way. Till this gear runs into your other gear right here. We'll actually use that as our primary stop. So you'll see right there where those gears mesh. From the factory, they don't set it up like that. They actually use this right here as your stop, which we're going to use this as a secondary stop, basically. So we want our main stop to be right here. That way there's no way we can ever run our concaves up into our threshing elements. And make sure the rotor's in neutral. I've already obviously ran that. I'll pull these little bolts here. Just for me, it's a lot easier. That way I can sit here and adjust my concave and level it a lot faster. You don't have to pull this for the wire harness. There's a little 10mm bolt. I'll just pull that out. That way I can just sit here and adjust and level my concave. Spin the rotor, make sure it's not hitting anywhere. Normally what I'll do is I'll try counting, basically do the same front and back. I like to keep what I've done is I broke the bottom nut loose. They're double nutted on top and bottom. I like to keep everything tight. If you don't, you will kind of pivot your concaves a little bit sometimes, and so if you don't, you might be pulling up right here. And if you don't have these tight, you'll be pulling that up into your back concave. So that's why I keep my nuts on tight on top and bottom both. That way as I'm moving it up, if I happen to be pulling this side up, I'm not pulling that back side up also. So.
Where are you recommending the pinch point be at?
What we're going to do is we're going to run it up until we tip or just tack the concaves on the front and rear. You're going to hear it ticking. Y'all get in there with a flashlight and visually inspect it and make sure that it's actually ticking, because sometimes if you just listen for it, call it good, it'll be ticking in the front and you think it's ticking in the back. So I will actually get in there with my flashlight and see it hitting the concaves front and back. And
I'm saying side to side. Where do you put your pinch point at?
Doesn't matter, wherever I'm ticking. You mean as far as on this side or the other side?
Well, where do you want it at?
It does wherever. Every threshing element in your concave, it's just wherever it hits. So it's only going to hit in one spot. Your threshing element on the front because we're not going to level this way at all. As far we're leveling front to rear is all we're doing.
Okay.
So we can tick here or tick down there. It doesn't matter. As long as I'm ticking, that's as level as I'm going to be able to get it. And we're not shimming it. We're not shimming this way at all.
Okay.
So we're just basically ticking the front, ticking the rear, and calling that level.
So would it be a little bit easier, especially like for the older guys, if you take like a paint pen or something and go down in there, so when that goes around and ticks, it'll just remove a little bit of paint so you can see it a little bit better when you shine your light in there?
That's up to you.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never done that. I just always get in there visually.
Well, because this last year I had to do it out in the field, and it was so dirty in there, and just nothing. And so I tried that, and it was a lot easier for me to do it.
Just to paint it. And
Yeah.
if that's yeah, I've never done it that way. I just always tick it, and then like I said, I get another flashlight and actually watch it, because your threshing elements usually. You can get in there and see your threshing elements on the back won't tick the concave. If it's ticking on the front, you'll actually see them off the bars, interrupter bars. So it can only really tick one place. You'll see right where it's usually ticking there. You usually don't have a threshing element and your concave on one spot and the same in the rear. You'll see the ones will be off, so you usually won't tick. You can usually get in there and look and see it. So. Usually when I start out, I'll get pretty aggressive with them. You know, I'll usually go like a full turn, turn and a half on your nut.
I know the one. I was gonna say the one wells we had. I know before Posey dug it already. I had everything wide open and only
As
did
you're
it
doing
go
that,
2 times in the back.
What we're doing is we're pulling that middle concave out to check the levelness, so we could have a visual reference of where that rotor is hitting on the concave. We want to know that it's hitting the front concave and the back concave at the same time, and then we're going to adjust it half a turn back from there, and that's where we're going to lock it. If you follow your operator's manual on the 1560 series, they have you pull a tying grate cover on the back and spin it. Which that works good. It's easier to spin, maybe, but you don't know where it's hitting. It may be hitting on the middle concave, and it may be rocking on the middle concave. So when you're going up and down, you don't know where it is because it's hitting on the middle. So we took that middle concave out, we're running it up tight to it, and then we're going to see that they're both hitting evenly on that. Then when you put the middle concave back in, if it hits on there, you drop everything the same amount. And if you need to drop another half a turn, if you're having to drop more than a half a turn on that, you got a high spot on there somewhere so you can look in there and see what's going on. But we feel when we're doing it that way, we're getting it closest to level, because doing it the other way, I have went in and found that the front's tight and the back is almost 3/4 of an inch away. And that could be because the Z-plate that they bolt to is bent, or maybe you got a bad concave. Maybe somebody's welded on a concave and has sprung it or redid the arch on it. And so there's several things that play into effect with that. A new way that Deere was coming out with leveling concaves is instead of pulling any of them out, you measure from the thrashing element to the backside of the concave. And you do that on the front and middle and back, and so you get everything level to the backside of your concave. That's good as long as you have threshing elements that are all the same. But now if you have a threshing element that's more down on the front, which they're going to wear more on the front than they are the back, you level it to the back of the concave, so you're still doing okay with that. But how much wears on the inside of your concave? we never accounted for any of that when we did that. So still, even after that newest change that they made, I've still resorted back to this. It's a little more time because you do have to physically pull that concave out, but at the same time, it's worth spending that time, because if you know that you're even on front, you're even on back, you're going to get a whole lot cleaner sample. That was one of the questions somebody had, how to get a cleaner sample. That's exactly where we're going to start with it. We're going to know, we're going to enter the concave, and it's going to be level with it. It didn't take much time to do it. We're going to, every year, we're going to adjust it, and we're going to compensate for how, or for the wear that we got on those concaves and on our threshing elements. So, the nuts that he was working on right here, that's where the big friction tightened up.
So right there, you can hear that. That's on the rear right there. And then I kept going on the front a little more. You can hear it right there where it's ticking. And I got in there and looked, and that's on the front. So basically what we're doing, we're just basically ticking on the rear and ticking on the front now. We're going to call that parallel. And then I always back it off 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. So I just use a 6-sided nut and back it off about 2 or 3.
One thing with that part of the job he's doing right now, once you get them tightened down to lock them down, open the concave back up all the way, those arms will come down to where you can get a wrench on them easier. Same thing when you're breaking the loose for the first time, take it down to there. This part of the job is handy if you have somebody up in the cab to get out the concaves all the way open. When you unbolt them, they're basically setting down there on the conveyor auger, the guide plates that they have down there, and so you don't have much lifting to do, but then you have to run it up, get the concave pulled out. The concaves do pull out easily, just need to remember to shift it into neutral to get them in and out, and then when you're done, kick it back into gear. Otherwise, first time you kick it in and go to cut, it'll warn you or beep at you instead of warning, and you'll probably ignore it and try to cut a little bit more, and then realize it really does mean something. The rotor isn't turning, and that's why I'm plugged up down the feeder house.
So after backing that off, spin it, listen for a tick. You don't hear nothing, so you're good there. And what I'll do is put your center concave in next. I always like tightening my top 2 bolts first. That way I pull that concave up as far up as it can go. Because if you tighten these outer 2, sometimes it'll actually grab right here on this lip. And you'll tighten these top 2 thinking it's tight. But then as you run, these will slip. They can come up a little tighter and you can run it into your rotor. So I always tighten the top 2 first, then the outer 2. Pull those block outs out. I'll take my screwdriver and I'll spin it. And you want to spin it a bunch, because I've noticed sometimes you'll spin it and you'll think you got a full revolution, and you make a little noise when you're putting your screwdriver in there and hitting that rotor, and sometimes right when you're doing that, it can be actually ticking that center concave. So you want to make sure you spin it a bunch, don't hear no ticks. If you do hear a tick, then what we'll do is we'll go out and back off another 1/2 turn, because still everything's level. We're just hit that center concave, there's nothing we can do about it. So we'll back it off another 1/2 turn, lock it all down, and then I'll run these as my secondary stops down to here, lock that in, and then recalibrate your threshing clearance, and you're good to go. So.
One other thing, when he's right there, you see 4 shear pins. So stick your hand on them, right? Yeah. Those shear pins are for that that sprocket or gear assembly for the concave to raise and lower it. If you get into lots of green viney stuff, Glenn's here somewhere, yeah. When you guys were cutting your buckwheat, did you guys ever blow that pin off? Shear pin on the concave adjuster. Cutting bluegrass, I know you'll do it also. Every time you get a great big green slug and it goes in there, it has to go somewhere. And so instead of blowing up a bunch of things, you'll shear that shear pin, drop your concaves down. Yes, you have to go and plug it, but at least it's loose at that point, as long as you realize that that's what happened and you don't just keep going and you have the concaves wide open. So in grain, I don't know if I've ever sheared one. It's always been in these alternative crops, but you can shear them. Any questions on what Paul was doing there?
How far do you back it off again before you set your secondary stops?
1/2 to 3/4 of a turn.
Okay.
On your nuts.
Small enough to know you, large enough to serve you. Your locally owned John Deere dealer, Evergreen Implement.